Senator Ludlam, have you got some questions here?
I've got a couple. Is this an appropriate time to just ask about a couple of specific assessments that are underway?
Environmental assessments under the EPBC Act. Probably 1.5 is better, Senator, which is environment regulation.
Which is
tomorrow.
Isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Maybe you could try and see if they're too detailed.
Could. I've got limited briefing in front of me, so.
Okay, and not the right people in the room?
No.
Okay.
So
I might ask a general one then, and I'll come to the specifics tomorrow. The specific project I'm interested in is the Perth Freight Link. Assessment is not yet underway. It's my understanding it's not been formally referred under the EPBC Act. But the decision has clearly already been made. Funding's been allocated at a state and federal level. In my view, quite political decisions have been made that project's going ahead come what may. How does that affect your assessment process when quite clearly a project is being given the green light before you have even been brought in to establish whether it's environmentally, socially feasible or appropriate?
Well, Senator, I suppose the first point would be that it's not unusual for projects to be at an advanced stage on the financing side, whether it's the private sector or government projects, or in an announcement sense around those projects with the environmental assessments still to be undertaken. So that's not an unusual occurrence. To go to your question in terms of what effect that has on us, we undertake our assessment or rely on the documentation that's required as part of the assessment, do that assessment and provide advice on its merits to the Minister if the Minister is a decision maker, or if the Minister delegates a decision to the department. We are obliged to provide that advice and make decisions in compliance with the Act.
Okay.
So,
and under your Act, you are, if you form a view that a project is environmentally unacceptable, you're perfectly able to recommend as such.
yes.
You don't have to approve everything.
No, that's correct. There's a provision, as you know, in the EPBC Act for us to advise and for a minister to make a decision that a project has unacceptable impacts.
Yeah.
As you probably know as well, there are very few projects that have fallen into that category.
How
but
many?
Nevertheless, I'd have to take that on notice. Sorry, or answer that in 1.5. I'm not aware of the number.
Yeah. Could you take that on notice for us in the entire history of the Act since when, 1999?
Yep.
When it was first legislated, how many projects have actually been refused? And do you have to bear regard in your assessment process if other Commonwealth ministers, or state ministers for that matter, have already announced that the project's going ahead? Does that have any bearing on your assessment process?
Again, officers tomorrow might clarify this, but my understanding is that it has no bearing on the assessment process. As you know, as part of the EPBC Act process, the Minister as decision maker will typically make a proposed decision and consult with affected parties, including affected ministers if ministers are involved in some way, and then we'll make a final decision.
How do your assessment processes vary or differ if the proponent is the Commonwealth or a state government as opposed to a private party?
My understanding, Senator, and again, officers might elaborate on this tomorrow, my understanding is that our processes don't really differ at all. There's no material difference.
No material difference, but the impacted parties or affected parties would happen to involve ministers.
That's correct, and that's not uncommon. There are many. As you know, the EPBC Act requires us to assess whole of environment impacts in relation to anything on Commonwealth land, any action on Commonwealth land, for example, and so that's very common. They're just part of the normal business process that we undertake.
I'll ask a little bit more tomorrow, although I understand the schedule's a bit more congested. But just finally, from me on notice, if you could identify whether under your Act you have ever knocked back a proposal of which a state or federal government was the proponent, even one single time.
Sure, and so just to clarify, whether we found such a project by a state or federal, where a state or federal government has been a sponsor, or the project proponent, whether we found that to be clearly unacceptable under the EPBC Act. Yep.
I appreciate it.
Or refused approval at the end of the process.
And that would, okay.
Either.
If there's a distinction between those two.
Yes, there is, yeah.
Thanks very much.